Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink with a couple of cards and matching envelopes using a couple of the dies that Simon Says Stamp released in December, so just earlier this month. And I'm using some specialty papers. I got my hands on the Tonic. This is the Navy TOILE specialty card. Just gorgeous. I get asked a lot, like what do I do with these specialty cardstocks? How do I incorporate them, etc. So I pulled all these out. I had ordered these back in, I think it was like November or something. And I've had them sitting here. I've used one of them a couple times, and I'll show that in a second. This one is the Rose Gold POSIES foiled card. I wanted to make a point of showing these in a video because when you look at them online, they do not do justice online at all. This is the Burnished Rose Mirror card in the satin finish. I've used this one quite a few times in videos. I'm obsessed with this. I have backups of that because it's just beautiful. And then this is the Blue Blossom 6x6 pattern papers. I had done a release and review video on the Blue Blossom release weeks ago, like 2 or 3 months ago. Hopefully I'll remember to link to it. But at the time, I didn't have any of these papers. I ordered these myself. And yeah, wanted to show these. So this is the Pink Petals Specialty Cotton. And this one's the Midnight Sky Specialty Cotton. So these two are not technically paper. They're like almost like a fabric, really. Again, shown these in like different ones that are like similar in videos, but I thought I would do an entire card kind of based around them. So I started off with my die cutting. I had already trimmed down, obviously, the cardstocks I wanted to use. I am using a metal shim in my Platinum 6. Spellbinders, I guess, does not recommend using metal shim. But when I'm doing any sort of detail cutting like this winter foliage frame from Simon, there's a lot of detail around the perimeter of this. And then I'm also using the Winter Wishes circle, which also has a fair bit of detail with, you know, the little letters and all that. So I prefer, for anything very detailed and intricate, I put a metal shim underneath the one cutting plate, and it just gives it that extra, the extra that's needed to just cut like butter. So I did my die cutting. I die cut the Winter Wishes circle from that brushed, like that rose gold, that brushed rose mirror. And then the winter foliage, I die cut twice. I die cut it from one of the pattern papers, and then I also die cut it from the Navy TOILE specialty. And I'm adhering them together and just offsetting them just a little bit so that pattern paper die cut obviously peeks out a little. It just gave it that little extra something, because when I held it all up when I was making these cards, I was like, I don't like how it looks. So adding that extra layer, just, it kind of gives it, you know, that shadow effect. So I adhered those together, and then I'm going to adhere that Winter Wishes circle right on top, just using a little bit of Kraft tacky adhesive. Just the teeniest little dabs, trying not to overdo it because I don't want glue, you know, oozing out everywhere. I'm going to press that into place. I'm actually going to stack some acrylic blocks on top of it just to hold it down so that it adheres and none of the little bits of it, you know, curl up. And then the dot to the eye, I'm just going to add a little dab of adhesive there and then pick that up with my jewel picker and press it into place. Good to go. Don't have to worry about it. So I did all of this twice because I thought, why not, when I've got everything out, and with die cut cards, it's generally so much faster. So I did 2 of them, and I cut down that Rose Gold POSIES foiled card. So I'd cut that down into a smaller rectangle, and then I framed it with just some navy cardstock, and then I'm adhering my winter foliage frames like over top of that. So once I've got those adhered into place, I wanted sentiments for my cards. So I pulled out the Tiny Words Encouragement stamp set, pulled those out, and then I have some more navy cardstock here, and I have it in my Mini Misty. I'm going to line up 2 of the sentiment stamps from that set just along the bottom, very bottom edge of this cardstock. Because if I take the time to line it all up perfectly, it just makes it easier to quickly trim them out when I'm done. So I use my anti-static powder tool, brushed away the excess. I'm going to stamp the sentiments with Simon's clear embossing ink, and I'm going to use Ink on 3's pink champagne embossing powder. It's another thing that I have raved about. One of my favorites. And especially with these colors, like I have been slowly going through my stash and like pulling out all the products that like match this sort of, this specific shade of rose gold, because I love it. So this goes really good with those papers and the finish on the like satin, rose gold cardstock, etc. So I coated the sentiments with that, melted it with my heat tool, and then I quickly trimmed these down into narrow little sentiment strips with my guillotine paper trimmer. Once I had these trimmed out, to adhere them to my card front, I am just quickly trimming down some thin 3D foam squares, just the larger ones. If I just trim them into one square into 3 little strips, it was the perfect size. So I can quickly pop those on and then pop these onto the front of my cards. And then the remaining sentiment I'm going to use on the inside of my cards. So I popped on this sentiment so that the outside of the cards will say winter wishes and then hoping today brings you happiness. And then on the inside of the card, I pulled out, this is an oldie but goodie set. This is the big SCRIPTY greetings stamp set from Simon. That, again, this came out forever ago. I'm not even sure I have it still sitting here. It is from like 2015. So like I said, oldie but goodie. So I pulled out the Sending Big Hugs, and I'm inking this up with Delicata Rose Gold ink. I finally decided to get some of the other Delicata metallic colors. I use the gold all the time. I have the silver, I use that on occasion, and then I was like, I need to get some of these other colors to experiment with. So of course I have the rose gold now, and it's again the perfect shade as well. If I remember, I will link to the refill with that too, because with these specific inks, I highly recommend getting the refill at the same time, because you do tend to go through them. Just the nature of pigment ink and metallic pigment ink especially. It just, you use it up a lot quicker is the easiest way to explain it. So stamped those big sentiments, added the little heat embossed ones, and then I'm going to adhere my card fronts to my card bases. As always, they could be done here, but I have to add just the littlest bit of extra bling. I'm keeping the bling, in my world, this is at a minimum. Because, you know, I got the die cuts and the foil and all that going on. But I have these Studio Caudia Midnight Blue crystals, which again, they're just like the perfect color. It's like this was all meant to be. So I put a few of those on these cards and adhered them into place with the Kraft tacky glue again. And then, again, these could be done, but I wanted to make envelopes. This is one way to use these specialty papers. So I have the We Are Memory Keepers 123 punch board. The envelope punch board works as well. And both of these papers are cut down to 8 1/4 inches square. That is the size you need to make an envelope for an A2 card. And then you just follow the steps like you do with the envelope punch board. So I lined it up at like 3 5/8. So it gives you all the measurements off to the side there. But you line up the first time with that first corner, and then you just follow along and keep scoring. Now, so like tilt, like rotate, I should say, rotate it. You line up the score line, score it again. And then I'm just punching in the centers there each time. Now, because these are, like I said, not your typical paper, if you're using like regular pattern papers and lightweight cardstock and whatnot to make your envelopes, this punch board, like the punches no problem. But because this is basically fabric, so it punches through that top sort of metallic layer of this, no problem. The bottom portions of it, the fibers were kind of catching. So that's why I keep taking it away from the punch board, and I'm just trimming that off with my scissors. Not a big deal. I just thought I would point that out because for the first second I was like, oh, maybe my punch is like faulty for all of a sudden. But then I was like, no, it works fine with regular paper. It's because this is more like a fabric. So anything like, I don't have a problem die cutting these papers. I've shown that in other videos. Like I've die cut it no problem. And it looks just great. But trying to punch through essentially fabric, that's where it gets a little bit difficult. But again, I just used my little snips, trimmed off the little pieces. It was good to go. So both of these pieces of specialty paper, I did the scoring and whatnot to create the A2 envelope, and then, you know, did the punching just to, you know, finish off all those little corners or inner pieces. I could have punched all of the edges as well and rounded those, but I decided not to even bother because obviously the punch was having a rough time and I was tired of trimming everything off. But I could have and then just trimmed it with my scissors and it would have been okay. But I decided just to leave everything as is once I had my score lines and those center portions punched out. So then I can fold up my 1, 2, 3 punch board again, put that away. And then all I have to do is actually like assemble the envelopes. So really quick and simple. And with these, because of the texture and all of that. I'm going to use score tape to assemble them, and I'm actually going to add score tape to the flap as well, but I won't seal up the flap until it's actually time to seal the envelope. And I will say, I would never try mailing these like this. Like, you could put a label on the front technically, but even then, I honestly wouldn't risk it, only because there's a good chance, like, I guess you could ask at the post office and pay extra postage to have them hand canceled and all that. But with something like this, I would either just put it in a larger, say a 5x7 plain envelope or a bubble envelope or whatever, or I would use something like this that I would hand deliver, or I would include it like in a gift. I wouldn't personally try mailing ones like this just because of the amount of texture on them. So I just added the adhesive to the 2 little flaps, fold that up. The envelope is now assembled. And then I've adhered 2 pieces of score tape along the actual flap. And like I said, I will not take the backing off that. I won't seal up the envelope until the cards are, filled out and I'm ready to give them to the recipient. And then, yeah, if I wanted to mail these, I would put them, I have like little rigid, like chipboard style mailers as well. And that's actually what I would do, is put the card inside these nice envelopes and then stick them in the ugly chipboard mailers that would protect everything and keep it all nice and fancy. So that finished off my cards for today. As always, I will have links to all the supplies I used, the dies, the stamps, the papers, all that stuff. So you can check that out below if you were interested. I'll also have a link to my blog post with links to all the supplies used, so you can check that out below as well if any of that interests you. Thank you all so much for watching and subscribing and thumbs upping and commenting. I really appreciate it, and I will see you all very soon in the next video. Bye!